3 bone-chilling true road trip horror stories that haunt you until midnight. The night was thick with secrets, an eerie fog creeping in as the headlights of the car sliced through the darkness like a knife. Kelly and Max were on a simple road trip, music blasting, laughter echoing. But little did they know, the road was about to lead them far beyond any thrill they craved. Was it a shadow lurking just outside the glow of their headlights? Or a warning waiting to be heeded? As they drove deeper into the heart of nowhere, the world around them began to close in. The trees grew twisted and knobby, their branches reaching out like gnarled fingers. "You think anyone's out here?" Kelly joked, a nervous laugh escaping her lips. But just then, the engine sputtered a sinister warning. They rolled to a stop, the silence heavy as if the very air was holding its breath. Max hopped out to inspect the engine, the car hood rising like a tombstone in the forest of night. A chill crawled up his spine as he noticed the shadows seemed to shift unnaturally. The moonlight flickered, revealing what looked like old tire marks leading into the thickets. Were they remnants of another traveler? Or something much more sinister? He wiped the sweat off his brow, his heart racing. "Kelly, get out here. You won't believe this." Suddenly, a shrill sound pierced the silence, a girl's scream that sent shivers cascading down their spines. It echoed from deeper in the woods, twisting into eerie silence once more. Adrenaline surged through them, fear painting their faces. "Did you hear that?" Kelly whispered, her voice trembling. They exchanged worried glances, uncertainty clung to them like the fog. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." Kelly gripped Max's arm, her nails digging in. They ventured out to where the sound had come from, each step crackling underfoot. The air thickened, pregnant with an unsettling anticipation. As they waded through the underbrush, a sudden movement caught their eye, a flash of white darting between the trees, almost human, yet not. "What was that?" Max gasped, his breath hitching. An old wooden sign creaked in the wind, barely readable, "Caution. Do not enter." But the thrill of fear pulled them forward. There it was again, a glimpse of a figure, cloaked in shadow, vanishing behind a tree. A pair of eyes watched from the darkness, reflecting the moonlight like cold steel. And just when they thought their hearts might leap from their chests, the silence shattered once again with a bone-chilling laugh, echoing through the night. What lay ahead in those whispers of the woods? What force was drawing them deeper into this nightmarish labyrinth of fear? Each heartbeat felt like a countdown. Would they escape? Or would they join the tales of those who vanished beneath the moons of midnight? The moon hung high, casting ghostly shadows on the forest floor as Kelly and Max edged forward, their hearts racing in sync with the distant laughter that twisted through the trees. The sound was unsettling, a jarring combination of delight and menace. It sent Kelly's pulse soaring. She felt more trapped than free, as if the woods were a living entity, pulsing with thoughts of its own. "What do we do?" she whispered, glancing back at the car, which now seemed like a distant memory, its comforting glow swallowed by the engulfing darkness. "We keep moving," Max replied, though his voice was barely louder than a breath. He took a tentative step deeper into the woods, squinting into the inky blackness. The echoes of that laugh danced along the branches, beckoning them nearer. Just a few more steps, and they could unravel the mystery behind the sound, or succumb to whatever lurked on the edges. The trees towered above them, their trunks gnarled and twisted, their presence oppressive. Shadows flickered, and just when Max thought he caught sight of movement out of the corner of his eye, it was gone, a wisp of nothingness mingling with the fog. Fear coiled tight in his stomach. Was it just his imagination, or had they intruded on something that should have remained hidden? Then, another scream. This one was agonizing, raw, and filled with desperation. It pierced through the night, freezing them in place. Max felt the weight of dread settle heavy on his shoulders. "Did you hear that?" "Yes." Kelly's voice was trembling, tears forming in her eyes. "I don't want to be here anymore. Just a little further. We have to find out where it's coming from." His resolve was shaky, but adrenaline propelled them onward. Each step felt like crossing an invisible line. They were no longer just explorers, they were intruders, trespassing where darkness reigned. The laughter erupted again, this time ringing through the air like a taunt, and they pressed on, their breaths shallow and quickening suddenly. A figure staggered into view, illuminated momentarily by the moonlight. It was a girl, disheveled and wild-eyed, her clothes torn and caked in mud. She stood there, a ghostly echo of what once was, visibly shaking. Kelly gasped. "Are you okay?" The girl's lips moved, but no sound emerged. Panic burst through the veil of fear. It was as if she was trapped in a world that didn't welcome sound. Just as they stepped closer, she turned and pointed frantically deeper into the woods, her eyes wide with terror. "Run!" She finally screamed, her voice a haunting wail that echoed back to them through the trees. Before they could react, a cacophony of footsteps erupted from behind them, heavy, pounding, relentless. It was a sound that sent splinters of ice down their spines. Max grabbed Kelly's hand, and they bolted, instinct taking over as the forest seemed to close in around them. Branches clawed at their skin, roots tripped their feet, but there was no turning back. "No!" Max shouted over the din. "We have to find the road." But the deeper they ran, the more disoriented they became. The light of the moon faded, the laughter transformed into shrieks, and the shadows swelled with an insatiable hunger. Max's heart raced. A strong instinct told him they were being hunted, stalked by unseen eyes eager for them to falter. Then, right in front of them, the ground opened, the earth split to reveal a dark pit, clearly a warning of the dangers that lay beneath. What was waiting for them? Escape seemed a fleeting notion as darkness lurked closer than ever. Would the laughter swallow them not just into the night but into legends that others would fear? Each breath drew them further into the unknown, and as they stared into the unfathomable abyss, one question echoed in their minds. What truly lived in the shadowed depths of this night? Max skidded to a halt, his heart pounding against his ribcage as he stared down into the pit. The jagged edges of the opening glistened with moisture, as if it were alive, a mouth ready to swallow them whole. He could hear the footsteps behind them, sounds of snarling laughter growing closer, intensifying every second. Panic clawed at his throat. "Which way?" Kelly gasped, her eyes darting around, desperately searching for an escape route. "Back the way we came." "No." A whisper of doubt flickered across Max's face. The last thing they needed was to run toward whatever madness was chasing them. They couldn't go backward, but the darkness of the woods swirled with an eerie promise of malevolence. "Jump," he said, his voice shaky but resolute. "Are you crazy? Do you want to face them?" He could see the fear in her eyes mirroring his own. The pit was their only option. Felt wrong, but they were out of time. "On three," he shouted, gripping her hand tightly. 1, 2, 3. They leapt together, time stretching in that brief moment of weightlessness. The world above faded away, and with a harsh thud they landed in the dank earth below, surrounded by darkness. Gasping, they scrambled to their feet, peering into the blackness with their hearts racing. Shadows shifted around them, and a feather of dread brushed against their skin. The laughter had faded, but the electric tension lingered in the air like static, preparing them for what might come next. "Where are we?" Kelly whispered, panic bubbling anew. Max took a deep breath and forced himself to focus. "I don't know, but we have to keep moving. Stay close." They stepped cautiously, the ground beneath them uneven and treacherous. The smell was damp and earthy, the air thick with uncertainty. As they ventured deeper into the pit, the walls began to slope, creating a narrow passageway. A faint, flickering light danced ahead, drawing them in like moths to a flame. "Do you see that?" Kelly pointed, her voice wavering between fear and hope. "Maybe there's a way out." Max nodded stiffly, willing his legs to push forward. But with each step toward the light, a low, resonating hum enveloped them. Like an ominous warning, it made the hair on their arms stand on end. Shadows seemed to ripple around them, twisting and darkening as they approached. When they reached the light, what they encountered left them breathless. An underground chamber spread out before them, illuminated by an eerie glow that seemed to pulse rhythmically. Illuminated figures danced on the walls, grotesque images that morphed into faces twisted in agony. "Are those people?" Kelly choked out, her hand flying to her mouth, eyes wide with horror. "I don't know. It looks like." Then a low growl broke through the ambience, bringing a wave of fear washing over them. From the corner of the chamber emerged a shadow, massive and looming, a creature wreathed in shadow. Its eyes filled with hunger as it fixated on them. "Run!" Max yelled, breaking Kelly from her trance. They scrambled frantically back the way they came, the hum transforming into a deafening roar, closing around them, a living maze determined to separate them. But as they dashed, desperation surged through Max. Not just for their lives, but for the whispers of those trapped in the dark. Was it just their lives at stake? Or had they stumbled upon something far larger and sinister? The sound of rampaging footsteps echoed behind them. The chase was far from over. They burst into the passage once more, but it began to tremble under the weight of their panic. The earth itself seemed to rebel, groaning as if it were a monster awakening from a deep slumber. Would they escape, or were they merely bait in a darker game? Just then, a vision of the girl who had warned them flashed in Max's mind. Her frantic warning echoed, "Run!" What had they gotten themselves into? And in that moment, something deep within him whispered, whatever lived here was going to want them for its own, but for what? The sound of their frantic footsteps echoed in the narrow passage, drowning out the frantic beating of Max's heart. With every turn, the walls seemed to pulse, vibrating in irritation at their intrusion. Shadows danced menacingly, morphing into nightmarish shapes that clawed at their resolve. A guttural growl permeated the air, and Max knew they didn't have much time. "Keep going," he shouted, rallying whatever courage was left in him. Kelly's breath came in sharp bursts beside him, her face a mask of horror and determination. "What if there's no way out? What if we're trapped down here?" He shot her a quick glance, his pulse spiking. "We can't think like that. Just trust me." With renewed urgency, they pressed onward. Each flickering light ahead felt like a beacon, yet that low hum seeped deeper into their bones, sending a chill that felt alive. Max tried to block out the gnawing fear, but what they had witnessed mere moments ago played on a loop in his mind, the figures in the chamber, contorted in eternal suffering. He could almost hear their silent screams begging for release. Then, without warning, the ground beneath them jolted, as if responding to the creature's fury. A sharp crack echoed, splitting the stone like a scream. Max lost his footing, tumbling to the floor as Kelly slipped beside him, gasping. "Max, we have to get up," she cried, panic now fueling her movements. Before he could answer, the shadow loomed back, more monstrous now, closer than they had anticipated. Its eyes glinted with an insatiable hunger, searchlights in the dark, illuminating rows of jagged teeth. Max's stomach twisted, and he barely managed to scramble to his feet, dragging Kelly up with him. "Move!" he screamed, charging ahead. Each step felt like running through molasses, the air weighed down by dread. They stumbled into another section, a long corridor stretching out before them with walls carved in swirling patterns that seemed to churn like a living organism. The exit no longer seemed a hopeful vision. It was just another part of this labyrinthine nightmare. As they ran, they rounded a corner and came to a sudden halt. Before them stood an old, wrought iron door. It hung slightly ajar, rust clinging to its edges like dried blood. A faint light flickered from inside, but it didn't seem right. It beckoned with an unsettling allure. "What if it's a trap?" Kelly hesitated, her voice trembling as she clutched his arm. "Better a trap than that thing," Max replied, his chest tightening as the sound of monstrous footsteps reverberated again. "We're going in." With a deep breath, he pushed the door open, the creak ringing like a tolling bell in the silence. The sight before them made his skin crawl. The room was filled with remnants of something. Chains hanging from the ceiling, a table littered with rusted tools, and the faintest whisper of despair echoed around them. Max froze, sudden realization gnawing at his insides. This was a room of sacrifice. An altar of suffering. "We shouldn't be here," Kelly gasped, her voice low, eyes wide with terror. But before he could respond, the door slammed shut behind them with a resounding bang, trapping them inside. The light flickered more violently, shadows slithering, and the low growl from before escalated into an echoing roar. "What did we just walk into?" Max whispered, fear morphing into blatant terror as he glanced around for a way out. Before they could even process the gravity of their situation, the room filled with shadows, a swirling mass of all-consuming darkness. In an instant, the air turned electric, thick with danger. They were far from safe. Something malevolent lingered in the corners of this place. As an overwhelming presence filled the room, a voice emerged from the shadows, deep and resonant. "You've come to play and your game has just begun." Max and Kelly exchanged terrified glances, knowing they had unwittingly stepped into a nightmare far worse than anything they had encountered before. What had unleashed upon them? What horrors were waiting now that they had fallen deeper into this abyss? The shadows quivered. They both felt it. The hunt was on. The shadows thickened, swirling with a malicious intent that sent a wave of dread crashing over Max and Kelly. Time stretched painfully as they stood frozen, their breaths shallow and quick. Max's mind raced. He had to think clearly, but the oppressive darkness rattled his thoughts. Max Kelly's voice trembled, breaking the stillness. "What do we do?" A low rumble echoed in reply, vibrating through the very bones of the room. It was like the churning of a dark storm, growing louder, more furious. "You must choose." The voice drifted closer, wrapping around them like a vice. "One must pay for your passage." "What does that mean?" Max shouted, defiance mingling with fright. "We didn't come to play anything." The shadows quivered, revealing glimpses of warped faces twisted in agony, locked in silent screams that sliced through Max's core. The room itself felt alive, pulsating with a sickening heartbeat. He realized they weren't just in a room, they were inside something terrifying, something that fed on fear and despair. "We need to find a way out," Kelly whispered, her resolve surfacing despite the fear. "We can't let it take us." In that moment, a flicker of light from the corner of the room pierced through the darkness, a tiny glimmer of hope. It flickered like a dying star, and instinct kicked in. "Over there." Max pointed, and they dashed towards the light, guided by the faint hope that it could lead them to safety. But before they could reach it, the shadows coalesced, forming a grotesque figure with eyes blazing like molten fire. "You cannot escape, not yet." The voice churned through the air, heavy with malice. The creature's form shifted, revealing glistening teeth, draped in the shadows of despair and hatred. Instinctively, Max placed himself in front of Kelly. "We'll figure this out. Together," he said, trying to fortify her trembling spirits as the shadows seeped closer, clawing at them like desperate hands. "What do you want from us?" Max shouted, his voice trembling but resolute. "Your fear is a gift," it hissed, its voice wrapping around them like a snake. "And your flesh may yet satisfy." With a snap, it lunged forward, causing Max to fall backward, the ground jolting beneath him. Kelly screamed, her piercing shriek echoing off the walls. As she reached for Max, panic flashing in her eyes. "Stay close," he gasped, struggling to keep his footing as the creature advanced. They needed an escape and fast, but the room twisted, distorting their path, making each step feel heavier as if the air itself conspired against them. Suddenly, the chains hanging from the ceiling rattled violently, creating a cacophony that could almost drown out the growling creature. Max's heart raced as he noticed a small latch on the wall behind the altar, a possible exit. Their only hope was to reach it before the darkness claimed them. "Follow me," he bellowed, mustering every ounce of courage he had left. They sprinted, dodging the snapping shadows that reached for them, each movement feeling like a slow-motion struggle against overwhelming despair. As they neared the latch, the ground shifted violently again, sending stones tumbling as the shadows surged, furious at their defiance. "Now!" Max yelled, grabbing Kelly's hand and making one last desperate lunge for the latch. His fingers fumbled against it, the rusted metal cold and unyielding. The growl behind them reached a fever pitch, and just as Max twisted the latch, a blast of air erupted, pushing the door open with a violent force. They stumbled into the hallway, their bodies colliding with stone walls, pulling themselves back to their feet as the growl faded. But a chilling whisper trailed behind them. This isn't the end. As they stood there gasping for breath, they exchanged wide eyes filled with disbelief. The darkness had only teased them with escape. What else lurked in the shadows as they ventured deeper into the unknown? What was waiting for them just beyond that corridor? The hunt had only begun. The corridor stretched out like a gaping maw, dark and silent, almost mocking their narrow escape. Max and Kelly leaned against the cold stone wall, breathless, hearts pounding in their ears as they adjusted to the suffocating quiet that replaced the chaos. "Where do we go now?" Kelly whispered, her eyes darting into the void ahead, searching for any flicker of light, any sign of hope. Max peered into the darkness, feeling as if it was alive, pulsating dangerously. "We have to keep moving. We can't let it find us again." His voice cracked, but he forced resolve into his tone. They stepped cautiously. Every sound amplified the scuff of their shoes on the stone, the soft echo of their breaths. Each step felt like a challenge, a dare against the growing dread that wrapped around them like an icy grip. The hallway twisted and turned, and with every bend, shadows danced, flickering against the walls. They moved carefully, avoiding a patch of darkness that seemed thicker than the rest. Max felt as if unseen eyes were assessing them, measuring their fear, their desperation. A sudden drag of chains clanged in the distance. They froze. Kelly's eyes widened, terror gleaming as she leaned closer to Max. "What was that?" Max felt his mouth go dry. "I don't know, but we should find cover now." Turning through a door on their right, they found themselves in a small room, littered with broken furniture and splintered wood. The walls were covered in strange symbols, scratched and clawed, as if something had been trying to escape. "What is this place?" Kelly breathed, her voice trembling. "I wish I knew," Max murmured, instinctively moving to a corner. He wanted to hide, to sink into the shadows themselves. A sense of dread was brewing, thickening the air between them as he scanned the room. A sudden thought hit him. What if the shadows are connected to these markings? He questioned, tracing a finger over a line that twisted like a serpent. Kelly squinted, reading the mystical shapes. Some kind of ritual? Maybe that's what binds them? Or keeps them away? Max replied. "What if we draw our own?" "Are you crazy?" Kelly shot back. "That could make it worse." But the gnawing doubt filled Max's mind. "Could give us a chance," he pressed, urgency tightening his chest. "I can't just sit here." Before Kelly could respond, they heard a rumble again, the floor vibrating as the growl from before returned, echoing like thunder in their chests. The walls began to shake, dust raining down like confetti. "Max, we need to go now," she screamed, grabbing his arm. "Wait, just give me a second," he pleaded. He searched, desperate for something to write with. His eyes fell on a broken piece of wood. Heart racing, he dashed over to the symbol-covered wall, scrawling fast. If this could help, if it's a chance. The growl closed in, sharper, angrier, as shadows crept toward them. Max finished scribbling the final lines just as Kelly yanked him back. "Go, go, go!" They burst into the hall just as the door behind them slammed open, the darkness spilling out like tendrils of smoke, reaching. Max's heart thundered in his ears. All the while, the haunting reminder of the shadows echoed behind them. They darted deeper into the darkness, feeling the heat on their backs, the shadows swirling faster. The air felt oppressive, electric, a shock rattling through their bodies. "What happens if it finds us?" Kelly gasped, her face pale, eyes wide. "Then we'll fight," Max replied through clenched teeth, adrenaline surging. "We can't let it have us." As they raced forward, they stumbled upon another door, darker than the rest, the handle slick and cold. With no time to lose, Max gripped it tight. On 3-1, 2 suddenly, the growl transformed into a piercing shriek that ripped through the darkness. The door burst open, and together they fell through. But with a long scream of shadows chasing them, did the exit lead down to safety, or into an even deeper darkness? The hunt had morphed into a race against time, and Max realized they weren't just running from the shadows but from something far worse that awaited at every turn. What would they find on the other side? They tumbled into an abyss of swirling mist, the cold air biting at their skin like a swarm of angry bees. Gasping for breath, they landed hard against a hard surface. The shriek of darkness faded, but the low hum of an unsettling energy lingered, wrapping around them like a suffocating blanket. Max pushed himself up, heart hammering as he scanned the dim space. "Are we?" he began, but the words caught in his throat. They stood in a vast chamber, larger than anything they had encountered before. Flickering torches cast a flickering light, revealing walls that seemed to pulse and breathe as if alive. "Where are we?" Kelly whispered, her voice barely a murmur above the silent thrum that filled the air. "I don't know," Max replied, stepping forward, eyes wide. He felt drawn deeper into the room, a magnetic force pulling him toward the center. The floor beneath them was covered in symbols, ominously gleaming like fiery coals. They mirrored those from the other room, flowing together in a kaleidoscopic frenzy. Max knelt beside a particularly vivid one, his fingers trembling as he traced the outline. It's like they're alive. They're all connected," he breathed, entranced. "This is not good. This is really not good," Kelly warned. Her eyes darted around the chamber, fear creeping back as the shadows seemed to writhe against the walls. "Max, we shouldn't be here. We have to find a way out." "Wait," Max said, feeling the pulse of the symbols in his bones. "What if this is the key? What if these symbols can help us? They could be a way to stop whatever is hunting us. Or they could be the reason it's here." Kelly shot back, panic swelling in her voice. Before Max could respond, the air shifted, becoming heavy with an electric tension. A gust of wind whipped through the chamber, snuffing out the flickering torches, plunging them into darkness. The sensation was immediate, as if the shadows themselves were moving closer, swirling around them with a sinister intent. "Max!" Kelly screamed, her voice breaking. "We have to go." "No," he countered, desperation clawing at him. "We can't just run. We need to try." It wasn't just fear that filled the chamber. It was something deeper, something ancient. Max felt it tugging at him, whispering in a voice that was not entirely of this world. "Look," he said, pointing to the far side of the room. Through the darkness, an outline appeared, a large, carved stone altar adorned with more symbols, each one deviating from the chaotic markings on the floor. It stood defiantly against the darkness, beckoning them forward. "I don't like this," Kelly said, taking a small step back. "Feels wrong." "Maybe that's why it's our only chance," Max replied, his voice resolute. "Could hold the answers. If those symbols can help us, we need to understand them." Heart pounding, he found the courage to take a step forward. With a glance at Kelly, who stood frozen with indecision, he pressed on. The moment he reached the altar, the room flashed to life. Symbols ignited in blinding light, illuminating the scene with a pulsating glow. A voice echoed through the chamber, thick like fog yet piercing. "Awaken what lies sleeping. Rise to confront your fears or be consumed in darkness." Max's heart sank. What did that mean? An ancient warning? As he turned back to Kelly, he noticed her pale face, her eyes wide in horror. "Max," she trembled. "I think it's here. The darkness. It's going to take us." The walls trembled as a chilling laughter rippled through the shadows, and Max knew they were running out of time. Could they unravel the mystery of those burning symbols? Or would they become part of the darkness forever? The shadows surged, and as they lunged toward the altar, the chamber erupted into chaos. What price would they pay to unlock the truth? The shadows lunged, twisting and screaming, and Max felt the very air charge with malevolence. Heart racing, he turned back to the altar, the symbols glowing brighter, almost desperate to be understood. "Kelly!" He shouted over the cacophony. We need to figure this out. Those symbols, maybe they can protect us. He reached for the nearest symbol, its warmth radiating through his fingers. A surge of energy cascaded through him, and suddenly he was not just touching it. He was connected. The symbols erupted with memories, visions flashing before his eyes, images of others, desperate souls who had faced the same darkness. Max, come on, Kelly cried, dragging him back to reality. She was pale and shaking, her eyes darting to the swirling shadows that threatened to envelop them. What are you seeing? It's like they're telling a story, he stammered, trying to hold on to the visions even as they slipped away. I think I can understand them. A whisper echoed through the chamber, softer now, a voice urging him on. Unravel the past, confront the shadow. The words resonated in his bones. A chilling promise mixed with foreboding. Kelly shook her head, eyes wide. You can't trust those voices. We have to find a way out. Just give me a second, Max pleaded, feeling the collective history of fear and courage swirling inside him. With each symbol he studied, new energies flowed through him: fear, longing, hope, and with it, a clearer understanding of the danger that lurked in the darkness. As he concentrated, the shadows began to form shapes, figures from his visions standing in the periphery, their faces twisted in terror. They were the ones who had faced the darkness and lost. Despair gripped him, but something else ignited a spark in his chest. I want to end up like them, he murmured, determination pouring forth. Max, Kelly yanked his arm. It's coming. Help me, he shouted, urgency flooding his voice. He closed his eyes, trying to focus on the symbols. We need to stand together. Feed the symbols with our energy. Panic etched across Kelly's face, but she nodded anyway. They moved closer to the altar, ready to confront whatever evil approached. The symbols vibrated at their presence, raising their glow to an almost blinding intensity. Together, Max said, gripping Kelly's hand. We're stronger together. Suddenly, a deafening roar erupted from the shadows. The symbols on the floor pulsated violently, illuminating a path of pure fire. It twisted and fanned out, wrapping around them like protective vines. The darkness hesitated, pulled back, as if afraid of the light. Now, Kelly shouted, her voice a beacon as they started to chant the words that emerged from their very souls, somehow knowing what to say as their voices filled the chamber. The shadows writhed and shrank back, screeching in rage. The heat from the symbols surged, wrapping around them like flame, shielding them from whatever horror lurked just beyond. But then, out of the maelstrom of darkness, a colossal figure emerged, a towering, monstrous shadow with eyes like burning coals. It reached for them, its claws stretching and curling in a grotesque dance as it let out a roar that rattled their bones. Max, it's not enough. We have to run now. Panic flooded Kelly's voice as she struggled against the force trying to drag them away from the altar. No, Max insisted, feeling something shift within him. This is our chance. Don't let go. A rush of adrenaline surged through them as the shadow lunged again. Max propelled forward, compelled by the symbol's energy, embracing the very essence of fear and light. They had to awaken what lay dormant within them. But as the creature bore down, clawed hands reaching for their throats, Max understood the final revelation: the symbols were not just a defense. They were a choice. They could harness the fear inside or be consumed completely by the dark. Would they rise to confront their greatest nightmare, or would it swallow them whole? The darkness shuddered, as if it hesitated in the face of their combined strength. Yet, that monstrous figure loomed closer, its presence a black hole that threatened to devour all light and hope. With every instinct screaming for survival, Max felt the ground beneath him pulse in sync with his racing heart. Kelly's grip tightened around his hand, anchoring him as every bone in his body urged him to retreat. I can feel it, he shouted, words barely cutting through the noise. The symbols, they want us to remember. We have to connect to the power of those who came before us. Her breath came in sharp bursts. What if it's a trap? What if we're just feeding it? Then we'll feed it our strength. He shook his head vehemently. We can't run. We have to push back. The towering shadow hesitated, its fiery eyes narrowing, sensing their defiance. With trembling hearts, they resumed the chant, voices rising in raw emotion as the cymbals blazed with light, painting the chamber in vivid hues. Words flowed from their lips, echoing through the chamber, wrapping around them like a second skin. Each syllable felt like a battle cry against the encroaching darkness. But then the creature roared again, shaking the very foundations of their world. Clawed hands swiped toward them, and the air crackled with malice. Max could feel the heat radiating from its breath as it closed the gap, suffocating and imposing. The altar behind them flickered. Would it hold? Damn it, Max! This isn't working! Kelly screamed, eyes wild with terror, a tear escaping down her cheek. Don't give up. He could feel the fear radiating from her, a palpable tremor that threatened to break their focus. Suddenly, out of the swirling chaos, a glimmer appeared, a memory of all those who had fought before them. Their faces flashed in Max's mind, their stories of bravery and sacrifice igniting the flames of courage within him. Listen to me, he shouted, forcing the heat of determination into his words. Each of these souls faced this evil. They didn't back down. They confronted it. We must do the same. Kelly met his gaze, and for a moment, hope flickered in her eyes. You're right, they were stronger together. But we're running out of time. With every ounce of strength, Max thrust himself forward, channeling the collective will of those lost their courage flowing through him like a torrent. The symbols beneath them lit up with dazzling energy, weaving tendrils of light around their bodies. Remember your strength, he cried, as Kelly joined him, her voice ringing out alongside his, fortifying the incantation. They were a force now, and a wave of golden energy surged like wildfire, ready to consume the behemoth of darkness. The shadows writhed as the creature lunged again, but this time, it was met with a wall of light. Max and Kelly stood firm, facing the terrifying visage head-on. The shadows recoiled, screeching in fury, and it felt as though the very fabric of reality was splitting under the force of their combined will. But just as they thought the tide was turning, the creature unleashed a screech so piercing it filled Max's chest with cold dread. A jagged voice slithered through the air, promising torment. You think you can defeat me? The darkness is eternal. The shadows surged forward once more, attempting to breach their newfound defenses. And in that moment, Max felt unyielding tremors of doubt creep into his mind. What if they had misread the symbols? What if they were merely delaying the inevitable? The swirling darkness tried to swallow them whole, clawing at the edges of their protective light. They fought back, but the shadows pressed closer, relentless in their assault. Max! Kelly screamed, eyes wide with panic. It's not enough. Then we make it enough. There was one option left. A desperate choice that would either bind them to victory or seal their fates forever. On three, he shouted, adrenaline surging. 1, 2, 3. As they unleashed their energy, a blinding light enveloped the chamber, preventing them from seeing what happened next. The darkness trembled, but did it yield? In that suspended moment, with hope heightened and fear looming darkest of all they could do was wait for the answer, while the world around them thrummed with chaos. What if they failed? What if this moment became their end? Would they break the chains of darkness or be shackled to their greatest fears forever? The air buzzed with electric tension as the blinding light stretched across the chamber. Max and Kelly could barely see as shadows clawed at their edges, trying to pull them back into the depths of despair. But in that fleeting moment of luminosity, both felt a shift, a spark, a promise that they were not alone. Don't let go, Max shouted, squeezing Kelly's hand harder. With every ounce of strength they conjured, their combined energy surged, wrapping around them like a protective cocoon. The light pulsed, illuminating every dark crevice, flickering with hope even as the darkness roared its wrath. The creature paused, confusion rippling through its form, the ferocity dissipating just enough to leave a sliver of doubt. It writhed, shadows swirling around it like a tempest. You think this light will save you? It screeched, the voice a chorus of torment. It can't conquer the eternal darkness. Together, Max yelled, voice straining as tears stung his eyes. We are stronger together. Kelly echoed his sentiment, her voice full of a courage she didn't entirely feel but was willing to embrace. We choose to confront fear. With that declaration, they channeled their shared strength into the light, pouring every ounce of their fear, their hope, and their determination into the swirling energy. The chamber trembled, pulsating as if the very essence of life was responding to their resolve. The shadows shrieked, those lattice-like figures shriveling away from the advancing light. For the first time, Max felt a wave of certainty wash over him. This was not just a game. It was a fight for their existence. Suddenly, the light flared, absorbing the darkness as tendrils lashed out and consumed the creature's form. The terrible monster shrieked, a cacophony of anguish filling the air, reverberating off the walls. Its fiery eyes widened, face twisting with rage and surprise as the boundaries of its power began to unravel. I won't let you win, it howled, but the shadows that once coiled around it now fell apart, dissipating like smoke. Max and Kelly pressed forward, hearts pounding, knowing they had to sustain the charge. With steely determination, they called upon the memories of those who had faced the darkness before them, their bravery, their pain, morphing into power they could wield. Then, just as the malevolent entity began to shrivel further, a howling wind erupted through the chamber, swirling around them. Max squeezed his eyes shut, trying to focus through the din, grappling with the intensity of raw emotion. You're not alone, Kelly shouted, her voice slicing through the chaos. We all face shadows together. And then, with an explosive burst of energy, they unleashed all their fear, anger, and regret. They merged their energies at the altar, and in that sacred moment, vibrant symbols lit up one last time, shooting out beams of radiant luminosity. The creature roared in sheer agony, its form collapsing inward as it was consumed completely in the light. No, it screamed, flesh and shadow wilting together. You think you can banish me? My darkness lives in every heart. But as the final remnants of the creature vanished, an overwhelming calm enveloped the chamber. The shadows succumbed, evaporating into a shimmering dust that filled the air with motes of light. Heat receded, leaving a soothing warmth. Max blinked, taking in the now tranquil chamber. The altar glowed softly, and the oppressive nature of the room shifted, revealing the ancient symbols a testimony, not of darkness, but now of their victory. They stood together, panting, adrenaline coursing through their veins. But as they embraced the newfound stillness, something shifted in the air again. A gentle breeze carrying whispers of gratitude from the shadows now freed. Did we? Kelly stammered, wide-eyed. It's over. Max whispered, relief flooding through him every inch of his being. We did it. Both noticed the glowing intricacies of the markings, and as Max traced the symbols one last time, they began to fade into the walls, etching out a new story of hope. So what now? Kelly said, her spirit lifting. I think the path is open, Max said, tilting his head toward a door that had appeared across the chamber, seemingly beckoning them. With a shared glance filled with unyielding resolve, they took that first step together, emerging from the darkness, hand in hand. Sunlight danced in through the door, bathing them in warmth. They had escaped not just the nightmare, but they had illuminated the shadows within themselves as the light of day embraced them. They knew they would carry this bond, this strength, even beyond the woods. The darkness was always a part of them, but it no longer held dominion over their fears. And as they walked into the dawn, they both understood a vital truth: the hunt may never truly end. But they embraced a new beginning, one where they would confront their fears, together, wherever the journey took them. Now, you need to take action. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next gripping story. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm and support us. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about Max and Kelly's journey. What did you think? And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Show your support and keep this community alive and thriving.